I don't know. I can.
Oh, no, that's
I know. She doesn't have it. Mark today.
Everybody please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Turn your phones off if you have them on.
Wendy Reed, Michael Behrman,
Here.
Jamie Melky,
Here.
Tom Graham,
Here.
Kathy Macho.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
May have any trouble, any questions on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I think we should first go to citizen comments first.
Okay. Anyone in the audience like to comment on?
I have a comment. Everybody, Tiff Easterwood, just outside the city. I have a comment about, or question about the budget, and I know that we're not on the budget tonight. So the question is, does the 3% charge go away with the new bonds, say the new bond passes? Thanks.
You can answer that, Victor.
I don't quite understand the question. Does the 3% go away? 3%. Are we talking about the electric? Yeah, station. I mean, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And look, the manager's override.
Yeah, that's on the agenda for section E. We do have JRE. We could ask to provide your name and address before speaking. Thank you.
J.R. Elliott, City of Harbor Springs. I almost said City of Petoskey. I have a question
Can you
for
provide
the
your address?
council in regards to a budget line item. Since you guys, since the council reviews and okays all the bills monthly and budgeting is part of your responsibility for the city, I was doing some reviewing of March 9th city council meeting where the city manager explained the budget in a PowerPoint with pretty pie charts. And my question wasn't really covered in that. So my confusion is in regards to the general fund and how the funds paid by citizens for their electricity or their utilities, but specifically electricity goes into a general fund, which was covered in that PowerPoint. I've been trying to follow how that works. Is it a specific place in the general fund or does it go somewhere? Everybody hear me still? Hello?
Sorry about that, Janice. We lost connection really quick. you can.
Are you still there?
Okay, you guys, I don't know where I left off, so I'll just,
You asked about, you didn't know where the money from the electric went.
okay. So this is the general fund reference. I just want to figure this out. So does it get commingled in a general fund, or is it revenue in excess of the cost that the city pays for the electricity to the co-op? So I'm thinking the council knows this so they could answer it, but as I understand from the colorful PowerPoint, which I appreciated, are these funds that for years were plopped into the general fund earmarked for all things electrical, like projects, infrastructure, repairs, or are they just mingled with other funds? So hopefully you guys can answer that. And then the second thing is something I learned from a friend who works municipality budgeting. And he was talking about something called a pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes, part of electric funds. And as I understand it, this pilot funds can go to any projects outside of electric infrastructure. So I'd like clarity if that disbursement is kept track of, like where do the pilot funds go? So thank you for taking my question.
I think I can answer that really quick, and then I'll give you the pilot part. But Janice, so there's a return on investment that the general fund collects from the electric fund. I think that's what you're talking about. And $240,000. That goes in the general fund for the council to use as it sees fit. So that money's just commingled with all the other money in general fund and however council wants it to be used. The pilot program, Nick, you might know a little bit more about that, but we can do a pilot, but we don't have a pilot.
Right, yeah, Janice, this is Nick. All of the electric fund electric revenues from like when you pay your electric bill or somebody does, those are all recorded and accounted for in the electric fund. None of the money from the electric bills goes into the general fund whatsoever. Now, the pilot payment in lieu of taxes, there's 3 or 4 different methods that municipal utilities. When this system was first built, it was paid for by taxpayers' dollars. So the premise behind it is the taxpayers that have invested into this should have a return just like any other investment one would make. The return on the investment is something that my predecessor had set up based on a nominal interest rate of the percentage of revenues in the electric fund. That's one method. The other method, which your friend was speaking of, is called pilot. So a utility, if it was a for-profit utility, any equipment, lines, transformers, all of that they would have on city property, they would pay personal property tax on. Since it's a municipality, most municipalities pick one of the 2 ways, and pilot is one of them. So that would say, okay, our net asset of $8 or $10 million, whatever it might be, I don't know, then would be applied to the millage rate, and that money would be returned then to the city as payment in lieu of taxes. Does that make sense?
She's muted now, but. Any other public comment,
Any other comments at this time?
preferably for something that's not on the agenda?
Okay, good enough.
Oh, we have one more. We have Margaret's iPad.
Hello, this is Maggie. 315 East 3rd Street. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
So I do want to bring up and this kind of goes back into what we're talking about, the overall budget. I do want to revisit policies with regards to sidewalks. I know we did a millage for sidewalks, I believe in 2017. And right now we are seeing areas of our sidewalks that are not being repaired. One is on by the post office, the retail store, kind of like Trish Woody. It's totally disintegrating. And I know that Victor, my neighbor, brought this up to you. I mean, it literally is disintegrating. And this was brought up to maybe go to the DDA to have this sidewalk fixed. So I think that there are multiple sidewalks in Harbor Springs and a lot of people that want their sidewalks to be fixed, that maybe we should go back to where the property owner participates in having that sidewalk to be paid for, the old policy, because what we're doing right now at the millage, we're not addressing and keeping up with the sidewalks that need to be repaired. So that was one of the things that I would like to see if this could be put on the agenda to be reviewed again. And my other question is, when you do ask for something to be put on the agenda, what warrants something to be put on? Because I think that there is a lot of public comment that takes place, but it never comes to be full circle where it is on the agenda to be discussed. And so I know that you had responded back to my neighbor saying that this is something that will be addressed in 2026, but because of the condition of that sidewalk, it needs to be addressed earlier. I know that on 3rd Street, we had a sidewalk next to my neighbor, and you guys repaired it with asphalt. And this has been like 3 years ago. And it's like, it's okay that we have asphalt for our sidewalks. I don't think that's okay. And I just want to know what we're going to be doing to keep the look and feel of Harbor Springs the way that it should be. So when we talk about budget, I think that Janice had a really great point. It's really hard to understand our budget the way that it's set up right now. And I would like to be able to understand where we're putting our funds, because we had a millage for sidewalks, but yet it's being put in multiple different places. And I would like to understand where this money is going to know how we're addressing this. So that I know it's something that we can't probably answer today, but I would like to have on the agenda going forward, reviewing what we need to do to upgrade our sidewalks as it is right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Maggie. You had a couple questions there. Council determines what goes on the agenda. So if something's brought up in public comment, it will not go on the agenda usually unless council wants to add it to the agenda, or the mayor. The second thing is we don't have a millage specifically for sidewalks. We have a street millage, and we allocated 10% of that millage proceeds to be used for sidewalk repairs. That is not allocated to anything other than sidewalk repairs, and it's right in the budget. It's there every year in the local streets budget is shown as sidewalks. So as far as how many sidewalks we want to do, and if we want to use more money from or any other fund, that's more of a policy discussion the council can have. I know I directed your neighbor or friend to the DDA because they do have some money they said set aside potentially for sidewalk repairs in their district going forward. So, yeah. So Mayor, we also have Nan amounts.
Ron.
Hi, this is Nan Motts, 268 West 3rd Street. I noticed on the May 5th minutes from the last meeting, there was a reference made to the Finance Committee. And I'm wondering who is on the Finance Committee? Do you have a place I could go to find that out?
I think you might be talking about the fundraising committee.
Well, it was on the second page of the, hold hold on a second. I don't think I can get it back up real quick, but it was on page 2 of the recap, the minutes from the May 5th meeting. And it referred to the fundraising committee. Do you see that?
Yeah, and so that's, I think that speaker at that time was referring to a fundraising committee set up by the Parks and Recreation Board, or they're talking about the fundraising committee that we advertised for, and we had no one submit to be on that fundraising committee, so there's two potential things they could be talking about in that comment. But no, we don't have a general fundraising committee from the city. We advertised for it to create that, but we don't have any applicants for that. And then, the Parks Board does have fundraising subcommittee, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Excuse me, Victor, it's not what she's talking about. If you go down a little bit more, that what you have highlighted isn't what she's referring.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you have up there. You have the May 5th minutes?
Yes.
Keep going down, 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 down. Right there?
Yeah, there.
Okay, this finance committee. So this is, the finance committee is the city clerk and the two council members who review the bills. So the two council members are the two newest appointed new elected council members, which is Jamie Melky and Wendy Reeve. And then Nick, our city clerk, is on the finance committee. So they review the bills.
Okay, so that's the finance committee. Okay, very good. Thank you.
See the look of surprise on my face?
And Mr. Mayor, I think we can move on to this agenda.
Oh. Did we,
Oh, sorry, approval of
we
agenda.
haven't
sorry.
approved the agenda yet.
Any comments for or against?
Um,
All those signify by saying aye if they approve of it.
Aye,
Aye.
no,
You say-
aye.
Wait, did we have a motion?
I'll make that.
Okay.
Very well.
I'll second.
Ready? Michael Behrman,
Yes.
Kathy Macho,
Yes,
Tom Graham,
Yes,
Jamie Melky.
Yes.
And Wendy Reeve.
Yes.
Motion carried.
we have several applications to use.
Yeah, next is the consent agenda, which we can ask for any public comment or if council wants to throw any of those out of the consent agenda.
I didn't want to take anything out of the consent agenda, but I had just a comment about it. I wanted to mention on a couple of these applications. I believe they're supposed to be submitted at least 30 days ahead of the event. And at least one of these was not. So if there is any issue or concern, like 10 days isn't going to be enough maybe to resolve it. So potentially, I don't know if just ask city staff to remind people, or maybe you've already done that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point there. We want them 30 days in advance so we can review them and make sure they get on the council.
Right.
But we don't have, I would say we don't have we probably could start one, but a tracking method to track all the different applicants who have events. We just don't track them. So we kind of rely on them to know the policy, but sometimes,
But
yeah.
I hate to have somebody assume that it's no big deal to bring it in a week or 10 days ahead of time. So in case there is an issue with something, so.
Maybe we just emphasize on the application itself, must be returned 30 days prior.
It's on there.
Huh?
It's on there. It might not say
Maybe
must.
bigger font. I don't know.
I think these people read to you.
It's on the first page. It says, please submit this application to city manager at least 30 days. I think more of the issue is sometimes these nonprofit organizations or schools, they just forget that they have to do this application. I think that's more of it. So we're not even looking at that application. So that's just more communication.
I think so.
Oh, we certainly like the Memorial Day parade.
Let's see.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All right, Kathy Macho,
Yes,
Michael Behrman,
Yes.
Wendy Reeve,
Yes.
Tom Graham,
Yes,
Jamie Melky.
Yes.
Motion carried.
that's for the discussion items. Chamber,
Yep. So Mayor, the Chamber Foundation, they raise money for a few events each year. Use street music, the 4th of July fireworks. For several years, the city has been contributing to both the Chamber Foundation for the street music event and the fireworks event. And we've regularly contributed, I believe, like $2,000 a year. 1,000 for the street music event and 1,000 for the fireworks, because they both are community events that the city feels or has felt in the past that are worthwhile to help keep going. So what the Chamber Foundation is, again, is asking just for a same contribution that we have done in years past. And I don't know if Kathy or anyone from the foundation wants anything to add to that, but their letter is in the packet, so.
Yes, we have been here many times and always appreciate your support. These events are raised solely by contributions from the community. We do the fireworks, street music, and the car festival each year. So it's always a bit misunderstood by many people every year that the city pays for the fireworks, for example, and the taxes pay for the fireworks. And gosh, that would be great if you would do that, but it's not reality. We raise money for it every year. So if you could support us, we would absolutely appreciate it.
And Kathy, could you just give an estimate of how much the fireworks typically cost?
60,000.
Right, so
60,000.
60,000.
thanks.
so therefore, the city council, the city's donation amounts to 1,000 out of the 60, roughly 60,000.
That leaves us to raise the rest.
Thank you.
Nick, I don't know if you want to explain a little bit about where this money comes from, general fund versus electric fund. Sometimes,
Community promotions is where the money comes from. I mean, that's a budget item in our budget. So we budgeted, I think, from 3 minutes, we've been doing this contribution for decades. It's just,
at least for the fireworks.
yeah, yes, not the tree music, but since its inception, I believe.
Well, I'm sorry.
but Bonnie, would you like to talk about the public request for display fireworks?
Well,
Okay.
after.
I'd like to,
I'd like to do with the donations.
I'd like to make a motion that council approves the request for the events sponsorship. An amount of $1,000 for street music and 1,000 for fireworks, 2,000 total. Is that what it was? Okay.
I'll second.
Motion in a second. Jamie Melky.
Just
Yeah, we had Kim. Request.
I don't know that I'm 100% in favor of donating to both of them. I think that the city provides a lot of service for all of these events, and I think that it would be really good to be able to see how much service we are providing to these events and how much that is costing us before I want to spend tax dollars in that way, especially with the ice storm that we are still unsure of the expense of.
I personally like both events. I think they're well attended and appreciated by lots of people.
Well, I agree with both of you in some ways. I feel as though we've funded this for lots of years without any question, and I hate at the last minute to say, sorry, we're not going to. But I do think the city probably should be reviewing its policies about these kinds of quote donations, contributions, whatever they're called, just to make sure they're in line with the, rules. And I don't know if it's necessarily the charter or if we need to look at Michigan law or something. I just like going forward, we might want to look at that. But
I also think that we need to take a look at our events on public property policies in general, because I think that, we've approved of 70 events already this year. And the taxpayers are paying to provide services of police and fire and DPW for all of these events. And they're being attended by the greater community. And I think they're great events. I just think that at some point, the tax dollars maybe shouldn't be used to support all of these events that are for the greater community. Especially when we talk about cutting things like leaf and brush pickup, or we've talked about cutting curbside recycling. I don't think that that's fair to the taxpayers to support these events, but potentially lose things that benefit them. And I think there's a lot of, if we stop transferring the electric money into the general fund, that's a really big chunk of cutbacks.
Any other comments?
I've got a motion and a second. If discussion is up, everybody's ready. I'll do a roll call. Kathy Macho,
yes,
Michael Behrman,
Yes.
Wendy Reeve,
Yes.
Tom Graham,
Yes.
Jamie Milky.
No.
Motion carried.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'll move on to item B, which is a public fireworks display request for the Gamble family. David Gamble and his family are hosting a memorial service on July 12th for Chris Gamble, who recently passed away. As part of this memorial service, they would like to put on a display of fireworks. It would be in the Bay by the same company who puts on the 4th of July fireworks. The city does retain jurisdiction over that section of the Bay where the fireworks will be shut off at. So our city code provides the following text that you see up there for display of fireworks. Basically, they need to come to city council and in conjunction with the city manager and chief of police, review and grant permission for such display, subject to any conditions or fees that the city may deem appropriate. Chief Knight reviewed the request, and so did Chief Cups, the fire chief. Mr. Gamble did submit the proper form as required by city code, which is a licensing form that the state of Michigan provides. And at this time, we don't anticipate the need to close any streets or parks. And I don't think we need any overtime from the officers. There may be some shifting of schedules, but I don't think there needs to be any overtime, extra fees in that sense. So yeah, I don't know if Bonnie, if anyone from the chamber, I'm sorry, the Campbell family's here, because I know.
I have, Dave is on Zoom, but I'm happy, I've worked with him. Should I?
Yeah, if you're, yeah, you're. I could ask David to raise his hand too.
No, that's okay. I've done the legwork.
Yeah.
So, and if we need him to speak, he's more than happy to. So I've worked very closely with Dave Gamble, Chris Gamble's brother. They contacted us because we handle the fireworks. They would like to do a presentation, a thank you to the community and a celebration of Chris's life, July 12th. They will be doing their own private celebration, and then that evening, what they are hoping to do is put up fireworks for the entire community. Invite people to come and sit at the parks and just enjoy. It is the same company that does the 4th of July. It's not as big or as long or as extensive. It's less, because ours is always better, but it's going to be a really wonderful event and a great celebration, and it's a way for the community to come in, and the Gamble family would really appreciate the ability to do that. No expense to us, to the city. They are handling all of that. Does anybody have any questions?
We did a celebration when his dad died also. I think I was president of the chamber then, and the last thing I think was a big G.
Well, we'll see what we can do. I can't promise that. Yeah. Any questions?
Here doesn't like fireworks?
My only question is, the Gamble family hasn't applied for the, I think it's the state of Michigan license, the Harbor Springs Chamber of Commerce has.
Because we're working with the fireworks company on their behalf.
Okay,
We are doing it on their behalf.
so the city doesn't have any liability issues with
There's
that.
the liability insurance policy also.
Yeah, the COI, the certificate of insurance was included in the packet there.
I guess my question is, historically, has council seen a lot of requests for public display of fireworks?
This is the first one since I've been here for 6 years.
I haven't seen any since I've been here, so you know, my concern is just establishing a precedent, and I think once you approve one request, I mean, you do look at all of them individually, but is this something that's gonna regularly come to council? I'm interested in hearing some, you know, public input on this, and also other council members' thoughts. I guess.
And I would also just say that, for us, we didn't use the events on public property application, because this is happening on the bay. So there would be probably a different discussion if the fireworks were being shot off of at a park or a land as opposed to the bay too, so.
Would we have to have our marine patrol on duty that evening?
I'll look the
Yes, we would.
Yeah.
But they normally are
They normally are till
on
what?
Saturday nights.
Yeah, they normally are.
They might have to stay over a little bit, but they normally are. Sorry.
I make sure the blue lights are.
Yes, yes,
That darn podium.
Yeah.
Top.
So yes, they will need to be out there to clear the area, but they normally are on Saturday nights anyways, might be a little bit later, depending on what time dusk is, but they're out there anyways.
Oh, okay, but if they did, they'd kind of adjust their time, so
Correct.
they're not accruing.
And they're paid, they're part-time, they're part-time employees. of
Correct,
Marine
yes.
Patrol, so they don't, we're not paying overtime for their hours. For example, they're working part-time. So it's not like if we had a regular police officer working extra hours to. And they're paid for the waterfront.
Yeah, just a quick thing on it, their pay comes out of the Harbor Commission, and they allocated me up to 2 years ago, to add the extra officer on, so that we have that 7-day-a-week coverage. So what I would do is, we've been under budget since they allocated that money, so if I budget them another hour or two, I don't anticipate there'd be any problem.
Can we get earplugs for all the dogs that hold on. Just kidding.
Well, I guess I'm not kidding about that. I mean, that is one issue that we hear in fireworks. And I've heard comments off and on all over the place about the noise, and not just for the dogs, but for a lot of people. And my concern is more that it establishes a precedent that, and how often do we, do we need to set up rules on how often we're gonna permit this? And at some point, is it gonna cost the city some extra money if we do it enough? So I'd love to hear some more, feedback from the community as well as.
Just to also follow up. That the average individual or community member can't afford to just, I mean, this is not an inexpensive thing. So it's not as if you're going to have all of a sudden a lot of things come out of the woodwork and a lot of requests come out of the woodwork. This is a special circumstance, but
But I'm not sure you could guarantee that.
of course not.
Okay.
No one can
Yeah.
guarantee.
I don't think we're. I get where it's coming from. I do support the event. I do question if there should be some fees charged to have extra. I mean, I know that you're saying that you're just gonna move hours around, but I think that's extra time and energy that you've spent to do that. And I think that it wouldn't be crazy to charge for the services that the city's providing, even if it's because the parks or DPW has to come in the next day to empty all the trash cans because 5,000 people showed up to watch the fireworks. I think that if there were conditions that if there are any unexpected extra costs to the city, that they are willing to pay them, I think I'm in favor of it. But I don't want to get into a place where it ends up costing us more than expected.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Carter Williams on Bay Street. So, in St. Louis where I live, this started and then we had fireworks at 3 golf courses every weekend for months. There are fireworks down here during the summer, just about every other weekend. I guess on the point, or so we do get them and the dog goes nuts. So whatever we do, it's like, whether it's, I don't know what's gonna happen, but there's certainly more than enough means for people to own and do fireworks. And I don't know what your policies could be, but it is already getting annoying.
Garen?
You want me to come up or just?
Yeah,
come
you
here?
probably should come up to the.
Aaron Goppigan, 6975 Houston Road.
Yeah.
I think your questions, Michael and Kathy, those are good concerns, because I think along with Jamie's comments, we need to be concerned about the dollars for the city. So that is important. The Gamble family is a generational family here. I think this is a great idea for honoring Chris. I would say, you know what, why don't you approve it and then approve it with some contingencies that make a precedent if it turns out to be something you don't want to do, something you could go back to and say, we're not going to keep doing this because this is what happened. But I think they've covered the cost. That I really appreciate. We're covered as far as police. I think it's a great way to honor him. It's a great thing for a generational family to be able to do. I totally agree with you though. Set some sort of guideline so that if it doesn't work out, we can do something in the future that puts a little bit of a guardrail on it. But I would say yes to this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Speaking for the dog in the room. I thought that this was a great tribute for a loved family member, Rhonda Trozak, East Bay Street. And I thought it was terrific. I read it in the agenda today and I thought what a great Saturday night entertainment for everyone. But if there were notices put out for people that do have dogs who freak out during events that are extremely loud and abnormal, I think that's nice enough. And I don't think we're gonna get a lot of requests for $60,000 fireworks shows every other weekend, but maybe I'd be surprised. So I would agree with the prior statement that it's nice to be able to put something in if it gets out of hand where it's constant some rules going, but I'm all for it. I think it's a lovely tribute to a beloved family member.
Thank you. We don't like fireworks, go to Bliss Fest that week.
I got somebody else said that.
Keith Newbury, 2565 in West Wheatley. Anything that we do in the city to attract people, even city residents, to spend time downtown, they're gonna buy ice cream, they're gonna go to shops, they're gonna enjoy dinner out. So I'm all for this. It's all about sense of community and getting people together to enjoy this. Yes, it'll be noisy. Yes, it will be actually brilliant. It'd be a fun place to, but just think about the families in Harbor Springs coming downtown on the evening other than 4th of July, where they can actually walk around and spend time with their families and enjoy the celebration, even if they don't know the Gamble family. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I've been here long enough that David Gamble died in 1989. I don't remember fireworks for that, but Chris and Michelle got married probably sometime around 2006. And they did have a fireworks display for their wedding. So it's been 20 years, math is failing me at the moment.
30.
It's been 30 years since the last extra fireworks display. So we have a precedent, kind of, but it's not being abused.
We do have a few people on Zoom. I'll get to them. I'll just say there are probably a couple of things, based on the comments I've heard and the questions is, I think this Michigan Fireworks Safety Act is a more recent 2011, 2012. It's, so we probably, if we had fireworks requests before then, you know, it was under probably, this is a state required provisions that we have in our city code. So there's that. And as far as precedent, which is a good question, our city code language here kind of leaves it up to city council at their discretion. There's really no strict guidelines for it. So sometimes precedent changes as city council changes too. So you may set a precedent as a city council, but in 5 years, you may have new council members who want new precedent. So just something to think about for that. But we do have 3 people online. We'll get to them. Janie.
Hi, Janie Jenkins, 441 2nd Street. I just wanted to say that Mr. Gamble did do fireworks when Chris's father died. And I've also been to at least 2 weddings that also had fireworks as a celebration. So I know there was a little bit of question about that, and I wanted to say those 2 things, especially the part about Mr. David Gamble when he died. So it's kind of a tradition for them, and I'm sure they're very, this is a big part of their celebration.
You, Peter Askew.
Hi, Peter and Ann Askew, 153 Zoll Street. We're in complete support of this. The Gambles have offered to cover the cost, which is very kind of them, and we're in total support of it. Thank you.
Janice Elliott.
Hi, I might be on the other side. I've known Chris for 50 years, and I kind of am imagining him even present listening to this discussion and thinking, I don't know what he'd be thinking, but the other side is those of us who do live right in town, and I live dead in town. I don't appreciate the noise. I'm looking forward to laser shows in the future. I've had many dogs wreck many mattresses because they're just frightened and they jump on the mattress and then they lose their bladder. So it means a lot that we keep track of how many requests do come in, because I virtually have to leave town. So knew and love Chris and the Gamble family, Chris's dad. I am just concerned about precedent and additionally what Kyle was saying about, you know, having the harbor covered and it wasn't all that long ago that there was other events that happened out on the lake that involved the death of somebody drinking and riding around their boat. And so there's distractions that do happen. So the timing of July 12th is dead center for that kind of behavior. So that's my input. The dogs, the vets, and just people that can't stand that noise and have to leave town. Okay? Thank you.
I think that's all the public comment.
Again, I guess I am concerned about precedent while it, when the next request might be from somebody in a small boat. That, or barge or whatever, I don't know what, but, maybe. It's a $10,000 fireworks show for someone's birthday or something. I just, I hear what, Mrs. Elliott says. I'm appreciative of the generosity that the Gambles want to do this and to memorialize in such a manner, but I just have to think there's other ways to do that. It's hard to just turn off the noise for some people. It's coming 8 days right after the 4th of July, which for some people, that noise is really traumatic, not just for some of our canine friends. So I'm a bit concerned about it on multiple levels.
I get your point, but I also think that if we were to not approve it from a barge in the bay, that they could easily just go and find somebody's house, like Carter mentioned, that fireworks are shut off from the point all the time. And so I'm still in favor of it. I just think that we need to make sure that if this is bigger than anyone thinks it's going to be, that we can recover costs if it costs the city more money.
Fireworks are enjoyed by most people. We're in a democracy, so I think it's a good thing.
I guess I'm still going back and forth. I understand, and there's no question in my mind, there are fireworks going off all the time, starting about June 30th. For 2-3 weeks easily. I don't know where they come from. I don't know whether there's something that's been requested before. I have no idea. No, I didn't even realize that we would have to approve these until I saw the agenda this week. So my concern is abuse, and do we want to put some, as was mentioned, do we want to put some guidelines to it and do this as a potentially as a let's see how it goes, and then we can decide if we ever want to do it again.
I don't think that we are tied to doing it ever again if we get bad feedback. I think that being that this is the first time that we've had this request in many years, I think that it's appropriate to give it a shot.
Yes, sir, Carter.
Just a quick comment on this. I don't know if you actually have statutory authority over it, but the other one is maybe create like a 1 or 2 license kind of thing, and if someone wants it, they buy whatever $500 for a license, and there's only one for the summer.
I think that's a good point.
And would we want to, if we accepted this, to put something in there that, so gee, if there is a fire, costs are covered, it's one thing to say there's not going to be any.
Insurance policy takes care of
all of that, okay.
Parks are good for the boat shelters.
I'll make a motion to approve of this request with the stipulation that if there are any unforeseen costs to the city, that they agree to take care of that.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the event. With that stipulation, if there's any additional costs to the city, they would be covered. They'll do a roll call. Wendy Reeve,
Yes.
Tom Graham,
Yes.
Kathy Macho,
Yes.
Michael Behrman,
No.
and Jamie Melky.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, we can move on to item 4C. Which is a request by the great grandchildren of Wilma and Elmer Hannah to place a plaque in Child's Park. And I know one or two of them wanted to speak, and I think they're on Zoom, so just please raise your hand. On Zoom if you want to speak. I will just run through this memo really quick. So they want to install a plaque at Child's Park, as you probably see in the packet. It's an 8 by 12-inch plaque. It's not was trying to acquire waterfront property developed to preserve it as a public space. So they were developing the waterfront for parks and for public use purposes. So they were trying to acquire waterfront. And so some landowners donated their land, some exchanged land, some sold it. So there was, through a variety of means, the city council at that time acquired lots of waterfront land. This one was a unique one coming to the city. I really didn't know how to address it exactly because we don't have a separate policy for erecting or installing plaques other than for donations of a building or a park that's been donated, then we install, sometimes have a plaque. We do have a bench policy that you can have a small plaque, and if you donate a bench, and we've done them, we did the Marina Park for the picnic tables. Historically, from what I know, council has sometimes proceeded cautiously with erecting plaques and signage. But like I said, small plaques do exist at several parks and several buildings. So the best policy I think we have to cover this request is our donation policy, although it's this is a plaque to honor a piece of property that was deeded to the city, so it doesn't really fit our donation policy, but you could potentially use that because they're offering to donate the plaque. So yeah, so you can choose to review this as a standalone request. I don't think I've had one of these requests just to donate a plaque, or as part of the donation policy. Just thinking about whether or not you would accept similar requests for similar circumstances in the future for other parks or buildings. I do know, so we do have two online. Matthew, if you want to go first.
Yep. Oh, can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. Matthew Trika here. I'm calling in from Seattle, Washington. My sister, Alexandra Trika, will be joining me in a moment as well. So thank you to Mayor, Council, City Manager, Director of Parks and Recreation, Harbor Springs Garden Club, and city employees who have been involved in this process so far. We really appreciate your time and energy in this request. The purpose today of us joining you all is we're hoping to propose and gain your acceptance for the proposal and approval of a placement of a small plaque in Child's Park. The purpose of, and some of the background is just outlined as well, is that our great-grandparents, Wilma and Elmer Hannah, had a deed swap with the city for some waterfront property with the express goal of creating a publicly accessible park in 1935. And what we're hoping to do is honor their civic legacy and commitment to public access here in Harbor Springs. The Hannahs arrived in Harbor Springs in 1919, and Elmer Hannah purchased and was also the editor of the Emmett County Graphic, predecessor to the Harbor Light. He also served as president of the Michigan Press Association. And at the age of 29, he also served as the president of the Harbor Springs Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of ties with the community that we're hoping to memorialize and their civic legacy in this deed swap as well, and hoping to celebrate the Harbor Springs values of community, history, and stewardship. Some additional background on the family is, as I mentioned, there was a deed swap of 65 waterfront feet along their Bay Street shoreline parcel with the express purpose of establishing a public park for all to enjoy. As my great grandmother said, natural beauty is meant to be shared with everyone unselfishly. And 90 years later, we've been working with the folks here at the City of Harbor Springs, City Manager, Director of Parks and Rec and Garden Club, to hopefully be able to install a small plaque memorializing this deed swap in the purpose of extending public access to the waterfront. And I'll hand it to my sister, Alexandra, to share some more information.
Thanks so much, Matt. So as Matt mentioned, my name is Alexandra Hannah Trika. I am another great grandchild of Wilma and Elmer Hannah. And I am here to speak a little bit more about the plaque we are seeking city approval to implement in Childs Park in recognition for this deed swap. Ultimately, what I wanted to highlight first is what the plaque would actually say. So yeah, if you can just scroll down, perfect. I'll keep you right here on this slide. So we're proposing that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen here, the plaque we are proposing would read Childs Park in grateful recognition of the Hannah family. Natural beauty is meant to be shared with everyone unselfishly. Wilma S. Dickerhoof Hannah. Matt previously shared that quote with us. In 1935, Wilma S. Dickerhoof Hannah and Elmer J. Hannah generously deeded the shoreline parcel to the City of Harbor Springs for use as a public park. This land was originally part of their 1919 homestead located just across the street at 263 Bay Street. So we are looking for your all's approval in the installation of this commemorative plaque. We are seeking a plaque because we view it as a low-cost, low-maintenance way to commemorate this deed swap that resulted in land contributing to the waterfront in Harbor Springs. We are requesting the city provide the labor and the sack of concrete needed to place the plaque, but ultimately the family would bear the costs for the plaque, the stake that the plaque would rest on. The implementation timeline we're looking at with this nice picture of my great-grandfather on the right is seeking your all's approval to move forward with the installation of this commemorative plaque today on May 19th. And our target timeline is to install the plaque in early July in Childs Park. So again, just kind of to wrap us up here, appreciate all of you and your time today, Mayor, City Council, hearing us as we seek the approval of the installation of this commemorative plaque for our great-grandparents that contributed to the increasing of public accessibility to the Harbor Spring waterfront at Childs Park for past generations, since this deed swap, and future generations as well. So appreciate your time, and yeah, open the floor to any questions or comments you might have for us.
Thank you.
Any comments on the plaque itself?
I think it's hard for me to really decide if I don't know where in the park it's going to go, or what the stake and concrete and all of that is going to look like. I also am very hesitant to accept a donation where the city is having to pay for part of the installation or all of the installation. I don't think that that's really a total donation. I would probably say maybe send it to the Parks Board and ask them to come up with a plaque policy before we move forward, because if anyone wants to add a plaque to another park, it's, I mean, how are we gonna say no?
My thought was just that instead of a separate plaque installation, could there be a plaque added to one of the structures that's already there? Would that be a way of saving the costs on the bench? On the fountain? I don't know. I'm just, I'm kind of, I'm throwing that out as just a, I'm not crazy about another structure, and I mean, another thing in that park, because it's not a big park if I'm remembering it right. So, though I certainly appreciate, in fact, and I think it's nice to be able to recognize historical, people that are important in Harbor Springs history. So.
Sort of goes up saying that they traded a better lot than they did receive, but nobody's made any comment on that.
Well, I don't think we know what lot they received.
Done that research, I haven't asked Jim to do that research exactly, but I'm sure we could put it together.
But I don't know that it's worth the city paying for that.
I agree.
You have Steve on Zoom.
Hi, my name is Steve Trika. I'm the father of Matthew as well as Alex. So this discussion has been going on with the Parks and Recs Board. In fact, we've been working very, very closely with them since, I believe, July of last year on this topic, wanting to ensure that there was something that was aesthetically pleasing, historical in nature, would be low cost and low maintenance. So we've collectively worked with the city parks group, as well as we wanted to make sure the important stakeholders were involved, including you. We worked with the Garden Club. The Garden Club had an opportunity to look at this. In fact, they're the ones that will be recommending the location. This is a small plaque. It's not something that's going to impose on access in the public way. It would most likely be placed within one of the beautiful gardens that resides within the park. It is a plaque made of bronze. It will be able to handle the 4 seasons. The maintenance on this is going to be pretty much nil. If there is a concern about the labor cost to install, the family will certainly stand behind and pay for those labor costs. We'll also fund the bag of concrete to place this plaque. The importance and the historical significance of this, and we could talk about the swap itself. There has been a series of research done probably over the last decade on what these swaps were and what the indications were and what they try to do. And there were quite some significant well-to-do families actually that wanted to protect that lakefront, and they wanted to ensure that there was participation across those that own that property. And Grandpa Hanna actually was influential in this simply because of his role as the editor of the Graphic. And he became quite prominent in the city, and he became quite prominent, as Matthew had pointed out, actually leading the Chamber of Commerce. So this was something that was very, very near and dear in terms of protecting that shoreline, making that shoreline available for the public. And we're really looking at a plaque that's the size of a sheet of paper. And it's going to be on a small stake that would probably be somewhere around 24 inches off the ground. And it's going to complement the beautiful flower bed with which it exists. So so I think that we can really alleviate any of this. We could alleviate the concerns about the cost as well as about impeding other parts of the park. So hopefully that provides a little bit more background. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I just want to clarify that Steve's been talking to the Parks didn't go to Parks Board. And I did talk with, remember Rachel, we talked about this. We didn't think this was an issue for the Parks Board because it was on a recreation, anything related to that. Even though it was going to be in the park, it was more of a council purview about plaques and signage in general. But if the council wants to kick it back to parks, that's fine too. But we just didn't see it as a Parks Board specific discussion.
I think that, in my opinion, I think we do need to look at who we are allowing to put plaques up, because I do think we should have a standard of how they look or what size they are. I don't know if we have any other freestanding plaques around town, or if this matches all the rest of the plaques we do have around town, but I think that it's worth looking at.
Mayor.
Anna Mulder, 372 West, I'm the chair of the Parks Board. Funny enough, we have on our agenda for next month to discuss a plaque policy. Couple of things that I think about is, what if we end up with like 12 plaques in Child's Park? You know, I think there's a precedent thing, there's a size thing. One thing that would worry me a little bit is the garden club folks are saying they don't want it in one of the garden beds. I don't think it'd be a good idea to put it out in the open space out in the grass. So I just think there's some things that maybe need to get resolved before this goes too far. So I'm with Jamie. If you want to bump it back to parks, we could have some discussion and come back. Thank you.
Rachel, you have your hand up, Rachel Room.
Hi, Victor. Yeah, this is Rachel Roon, Parks Director with the City of Harbor. So yeah, I've been working with this family for, gosh, probably, I don't know, close to a year. Again, we didn't have a policy for plaques. We have multiple plaques in parks. That's why Victor and I thought it was best to bring to council. It does match the current plaques in our park. I did let Steve and the family know bronze. I did let them know smaller. We discussed a garden as an option, but that was only one of the options. There are other places we could put it in the park, possibly even other structures we could put it to. It can go back to Parks Board. I have no issue with that, but I do want it to be clear that we did talk about having them all uniform within our parks for plaques.
Thanks, Rachel.
Rachel, can you give, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank at what plaques are there already where, just, can you give me an example? I'm sorry, it's my memory.
Yeah, I may not be able to give an example of a freestanding per se. In Harborview Park, we have a boulder with a very large boulder with a plaque on it. The Shade Drain has a boulder with a plaque on it. We just approved a plaque at Ford Park in memory of a staff member, or a volunteer rather, sorry. There is a plaque on a boulder at Zorn Beach. There is a couple plaques down at the waterfront in front of the Harbor Master Building. Yeah, almost every park has one, to be honest. And that's kind of why Victor and I said we don't really have a firm policy. They all seem to match and have the same aesthetic. But I can't say a freestanding one. Most of them are on boulders or placed on something.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a plaque at Cosequat Park as well on a boulder.
There's also one at, I think, the skate park building.
Yeah. And the skate park has one that went in the past year.
Too.
Any further discussion, or anybody, there's a motion for again, or send it back to the park?
And there's a big plaque at the city beach because that was all donated to the city. So I don't know how we can say, well, take your property, thank you very much, but we're not gonna memorialize your very valuable gift with a tiny little plaque.
It was created.
The city beach property?
No, the property we're talking about, right?
Yeah, but they traded the waterfront property for the property, the house across the street, because it's 263 Bay Street, that's Wood's house.
Right, we don't know what property
We
they
don't
got in
know that.
exchange.
We know that was where their property, but we don't know if that's what they exchanged.
Well, the newspaper office was also on that property.
Right.
So,
Exchange for a piece of land where the old fire department used to be,
yeah.
wherever, I don't know where that one.
Who's old enough to remember?
It's a city hall.
In this area.
But if anyone else in the city wants to give the city their waterfront property, we'll put a plaque there.
I think what's unique more about this case is not so much that they're requesting to put a plaque, is that most times the plaques that have been requested have been in conjunction with the donation that was given. So this, we're talking about 100+ years later. So that's why this was just a little bit different.
Right.
And why, if this was a donation of, a building or a park or whatever, that would have probably been part of the donation terms and conditions with our donation policy. So that's that probably would all be taken care of with the donation policy that we have in place. But this is why this is just a little bit different, is because it's 85 year or 90 years after the deed swap donation of the parcel happens.
But I would suggest that we put the plaque on the fountain, because I think it'll be sturdier and hold up better over the long time than to put it on a stake in the ground. And it'll be neater and tidier.
Any other comments? Or again? Let's go.
Linda Rockwitz, 519 East Third Street. I just think that's the coolest story. I'm trying to get my head around homesteading on the waterfront. That's just, and I love this, the quote, natural beauty is meant to be shared. So I think it's wonderful.
I like the idea, as I hear comments, I really, after I came into it, not quite sure knowing how I felt about it, and that's what's so helpful about public participation and hearing other council people's perspectives. I like I think I'm in favor of, I think I probably might be in favor of approving this, but sending it to Parks for their recommendation on placement. And also, I know I don't mean to sound petty, but I think for me, it would be important that the family who's generously doing this also as part of their contribution, pay for the time, the labor and material costs, if any. But I would like to see it approved with the condition that it go to the Parks Board for placement. And if they want to collaborate with a garden club or whatever their mechanism is, in the city, not bear the cost of installation.
If that is something that becomes part of the motion, would you want the placement then to come back to city council, or are you okay with the Parks Board advising staff on where it should be located?
It seems to me they should be able to figure that out on their own.
I would agree. I agree.
Is that your motion?
So what I hear, yeah, before there's a motion, what I've heard are two things that.
Probably not that, probably, maybe, I think the most part, but the other part.
What I'm hearing for motion potentially so far is that they go back to Parks Board for final advice on location and placement, and then the costs of the install should be borne by the family and not by the city.
Correct. Yes. I'll second that.
Well, who, Michael made it? I didn't make it.
Made and seconded. Can I read that back a little bit? Word for word, please.
Council conditionally approved this with the stipulation that it goes back to Parks Board for placement and location, and that the family agrees to bear the cost, any costs associated with installation, including time, labor, and materials.
Okay, we seconded that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I got a motion in a second. Tom Graham.
Yes.
Michael Behrman.
Yes.
Wendy Reed.
Yes.
Kathy Macho.
Yes.
Jamie Melky.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Great. Now we can move on to what I plan to be the shortest discussion of this meeting. Substation bonding. No, we're at this. Yeah, all right. That's the update from the Historical Society and Andrew J. Blackbird.
All right, I'll live up to your word. Not that I didn't enjoy all that discussion, and as the Historical Society, I think plaques like that are helpful. We are a very historical community, and as we send people about our town, it is wonderful to hear those stories, as Linda said, so I hope we can make that work. We have some really good staked plaque
samples at the Historical Society. They're kind of anchored in the shrubs. And so if anybody wants to come by and look at those, and of course, we have ones mounted on rocks too. So yay for history. Okay, my name is Kristen Baylog. I'm the Executive Director of the Harbor Springs Area Historical Society. I'm joined by my staff, Collections Manager and Program Coordinator, Beth Wemagwas, and Teddy Tan is in the back, and my board chair, Dave Neff, is here, and I have a trustee, Mark Prendeville, who's here. And these are all people who are contributing to keeping the Blackbird Museum history alive and as a center point for the focus of our history here in Harbor Springs. So last year, we agreed on a 2-year contract with the city. And so I'm just here today to give you a report on where we're at in our agreement. The focus of the sheet in your packet is based on our plans for 2025 year. I wanted to clarify with you because I don't think I've done a great job of that in my previous presentations of how much we are working with the tribal community. And since January of this year, we have established a Blackbird Museum focus group, and the members of that group are in your packet. And they include Marcy Reyes, who is in legal and legislative for the Tribal Council, Regina Brubaker Carver, who is a health care provider for the tribe, Eric Hemingway, who is archives and records for the tribe, and Heather Howard is an MSU professor of anthropology who has a passion for bringing communities together in collaboration in the indigenous communities to continue teaching and supporting the education of their culture. And Heather has been very instrumental in leading our 2025 projects moving forward. She can't be here tonight. She gave me permission to apologize. She had a horrible allergic reaction. So I have shifted my presentation a little bit because I would like Heather to come back and to present a little bit more of this from her perspective as a neutral party. As we move forward, we're all on the same side. We all have the same mutual goals. But the way we're operating is Heather is guiding us and helping us navigate with the help of Susan Ford, who's a donor and has a passion for preservation, Mark Prendeville, our trustee, and Marcy Reyes is also a trustee at the Historical Society. So Heather is operating on bringing the two entities together, that being the Historical Society and the Adawa community, and where we navigate this path and what our goals are. So I really do want her to speak to council, and we will come back to you in the near future, give you another courtesy report. But my purpose here today is just to share with you the progress that we've made in 2024 that was related to our original agreement, and that was to establish full-time leadership at the museum, which we've done. We expanded public visitation. We developed 2 new exhibits in the museum, and there's yet another one that Beth just curated last week. It's now open. We have prepared new materials, and we have mined the assets of the Blackbird collection, which are actually pretty phenomenal. We have over 50 new quill boxes that are on display in conjunction with the exhibit that's going on right now at the Harbor Springs History Museum. And so we're beginning to connect our history here. And the collection at the Blackbird Museum precedes the exhibit that you will see at the Harbor Springs History Museum. So that just begins to tell you the value of the artifacts that we have in that collection. We also were able to catalog the entire collection, which was one of our bullet points in our 2-year agreement. We've begun to research and find resources for grant writing not only for programming, but possibly for renovation. Right now, there's a lot of turmoil in what's available for federal funding, but I have been able to identify private donors as well. And we're beginning to develop marketing and educational programs. This year, we will have a quill box workshop in conjunction with the museum. So in all, we have met our recommendation or our side of the agreement for 2024, and we're moving forward in 2025. Still checking some boxes. We have some website visibility and communications that we'd like to pass on to the appropriate person with the city, because there's no presence of the Blackburn Museum at the city website level. So we'd like to reconnect that. There has been in the past. And we also will be investing our own money to add a Blackburn Museum tab on our website. We've also noticed that the city master plan, the Blackburn Museum is not referenced in the 2024 to 2029 capital improvement plan. So we would just recommend that somehow the museum in the future plans for the museum be solidified for its place in the Harbor Springs cultural and civic landscape. So however the council sees that to be addressed.
Well, Kirsten, I think that's a good point, because it was in the CIP at one point, but I thought we were going to kind of relook at the projects that need to be done there. So we'll sit down and talk about what potential project.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what
we wondered if that was a part of just kind of missing information to solidify what that looks like for the master plan. So the impact statement that I'd like to share with you today is the stewardship of the Blackburn Museum has created measurable and cultural and educational value for the community, from reintroducing the museum as a public gathering space to building relationships with Native artists and knowledge holders. 2024 has laid a strong foundation for growth. We respectfully affirm that the $49,000 in city funding enabled impactful public programming, enhanced interpretation of Native history, and critical progress toward long-term museum development goals. So we thank you. This is an honor. It's a step back in time that should have happened a long time ago, but it's never too late. And it's been a really exciting venture for us to squeeze into all of our projects right now with the city. So looking ahead, the outline is in your packet that I gave you. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask me about that, and then I'll move into the 2025 proposal.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify for the public and council members who may not know, the museum used to be its own separate fund in the budget, but previous year we had suggested rolling it into the general fund budget because we were just transferring money from the general fund budget to the historical budget back and forth. So it just really didn't make sense. But we also are deeded that museum and we were deeded that museum and is meant to be operated and opened as used as a museum. So we have to keep that open as a museum. So just for some background information as to how this kind of developed, this partnership with the Historical Society. We used to have part-time staff there that did a collect catalog and kept the museum open, but that kind of waned off as that staff member got ill and stuff. And so there was a period for a few years where we didn't have much going on at Blackbird Museum. There used to be also a Blackbird Museum. It was a nonprofit group. It was also like, I think it was it was an advisory committee to the city.
Yeah. They acted like as a council.
Yep. I just wanted that context for.
So I just am asking council for 2025, we're requesting a modest increase of 3%. Our agreement was for an increase up to 4%. So the fee this year would be for the services would be $50,500. Those extra monies would go toward marketing, advertising. We have not branched out in that capacity as a separate entity for the Blackbird Museum. We need to start putting it in the same listings that the Shea Works Museum goes in, the Harbor Springs History Museum. And from our Google statistics, we're seeing a great increase of people searching for it and people looking for directions. We've set up a phone line, we've set up the internet to merge with our technological, answering the phones and things like that into the near future when the Shea House comes online, that will all take place. So we're making our investment and we're just hoping to do a little more promoting and share with the programming that we have outlined.
Thank you, Kristen.
Questions?
Anybody have any?
Our first program is this Thursday, 5:30. It's sold out. It's sold out. Sorry. Okay, we'll have more. Okay.
So if we don't have any questions, oh, I'm sorry, we need to decide on the percentage.
That would be, yeah, that would be the only thing you'd need to decide on. Of course, you don't have to, but it's called for in the agreement to consider it, so.
When would that be effective to change?
When it start July.
Yeah, count April, it's April to May 1st, so council makes 2 payments. One by the end of June and the second by the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
So.
That's right, because it happened mid.
Yeah.
Did we account for an increase in the 2025 budget? I don't remember off the top of my head.
I don't remember off the top of my head, Nick, I know you generally put inflationary increases, but.
Yeah.
Everyone's top of the head is
For the minimal amount that it would be just part of our annual year adjustment for anything that needs to move. One way or the other.
and roughly, roughly what was the 3% amount?
50,500.
1,500 is the increase.
1,500, okay, because the budget called, the agreement called for 50,500, you said?
So the agreement was for $49,000 per year,
Okay.
so a 3% increase would be up
Gotcha.
to 50,500.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, just to clarify, there 4,000 of that in 2024 is used for marketing, programming, not marketing, for programming materials and supplies. So this 1,500 would be dedicated to marketing.
And the agreement states on this page here, this second paragraph, the agreement will be reviewed by both parties in April 2025. We're a little late on that, at which time consideration will be given for cost adjustment up to 4% for 2025, so.
And I would not have budgeted $49,000. I would have budgeted 50,000 just for round figures. So we're 2/3 of the way there.
Is there an entrance fee?
There isn't at this time. It's admission by donation.
The Blackbird Museum had always been open as a donation, entrance by donation. We haven't. I think your historical museum is the same setup.
We currently are as well. Yes, we will be changing to admission will be required at our locations once the Shea House comes online.
I'll make a motion, we 3%.
I'll second.
Tom Graham,
Yes.
Michael Behrman,
Yes.
Wendy Reeves,
Yes.
David Melky,
Yes.
Kathy Marshall.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
All right, this final agenda item is the substation and electric project discussion.
This is just 5 minutes,
This
right?
is- So you have a lot of information in your packet. I also have some additional information that I'll be sharing as well, putting on the screen, but To summarize, we are proposing bond for our substation project as well as potentially two other projects. The two other projects that we outlined in previous meetings were the M119 Phase 3 and Phase 4 line rebuild. There's 4 phases of that project. We've completed 1 and 2. And we worked on securing easements from private property owners for Phase 3. We won't need those for Phase 4. So that's a line rebuild that we need to do on M119 west toward Birchwood. The third project was an AMI advanced metering infrastructure. And both of those projects, a conservative estimate for each of them is $1.5 million. The substation transmission line project is about $6.5 million. We posted a notice of intent for state law to give the public 45 days to submit a petition if they wanted to put the matter of issuing bonds to vote of the public. The electorate, we did not receive any petitions, so now it's up to council to decide on how much to bond for. We put that notice up to $10 million just because we wanted to ensure that if we did want to bond for that much, we were able to. In the report, you'll see that we have our bond advisors, Benzinski and Co. They provided a debt service schedule for different bond amounts. And this bond amount would be assuming 25 years of repayment, and interest rate is at 4.5%. That was as late as last week's interest rate that was available. That could still go up or down, we don't know, but it's a gamble at this point going forward. But 4.5% seems to be the interest rate that the most recent interest rate that we were looking at. So for the different bond amounts, you see estimated annual payments from $465,000 roughly a year for a $7 million bond, all the way to $10 million, sorry, $667,000 for a $10 million. And you also see the total repayment with the interest there compared to original bond amount. Of course, the council could decide any different bond amount as well. Could go as low as 6.5 million, which is the estimate cost for the substation. You go as high as $7 million or anywhere in between. We did in our 2021 electric system rate study, we did account for these projects, but of course they weren't as expensive then, and our bond did not account for $6.5 million substation project. It was a $5.5 million project at the time, and it did not account for bond for these other two projects. As I stated in my March 17th memo, this means that the city should probably continue an annual 3% inflationary rate. And the reason why we want to, and I have some more about rates that I handed out to you, and I'll put up on the screen here. But rates, we need to consider, we don't need to decide on rates today, but we need to consider the potential impact this could have on rates and the kind of impact you want to see on council on rates as council. So I think it's important to look at that as well. And before we get into that analysis, I just want to two historical things just to help shed some light on the why we need to maintain regular rate increases going forward. We had only adjusted rates incrementally and irregularly historically since, for example, in 1980, the in-city residential rate stood at 5 cents a kilowatt hour. Today it's 8.67 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a rate increase of 73% over 45 years. However, the cost of electricity has nearly tripled since then. That doesn't mean we need to triple our rates, but that's just showing that we hadn't kept up with the inflationary costs. Our ready to serve charge, however, that has increased in line with inflation. It was, I believe, $2.75 a month back in 1980. Now it's $10 per month. And that's for in-city resident. Of course, we have different rate structures, rate schedules for different classes of, in-city versus out-of-city versus commercial in-city, commercial out-of-city, et cetera. There's different, but I'm using the rate schedule for in-city residential. The second issue is something to give consideration that we don't need to decide on today, but both of these things should be decided on for a budget cycle, is the return on investment from the electric fund into our general fund. That return on investment, there's a few reasons why it probably happened. I don't have any documentation historically as to why, but we only can assume why these happen. And this ROI is probably because The new electric system infrastructure was funded by the general fund tax base. So the city at that time decided, well, we're gonna make a return on investment to the taxpayers who had funded the improvements to our electric system. That return on investment now is $240,000 a year. I looked at 1980, it was $90,000 per year. So it's gone up with the increase in revenue. It's gone up in line with that. So a reason for reducing or eliminating the return on investment is that the original infrastructure funded by taxpayers has long been depreciated. I think we're at a 70% depreciation schedule. So most of what you see out there was not funded by the taxpayers. It was funded by the electric fund ratepayers. A second reason is that the new electric system, well, that was the second reason. The new system has been funded by electric customers and not taxpayer money. You can justify a return on investment payment by viewing it as taxpayers' initial investment into the electric system. So they initially invested that and they expect a return on their investment. But this is not really a business per se. This is our electric utility is not a for-profit business. So, the taxpayers don't expect a profit from it, when they set up the electric system. So it's a little different than if a business were to come in and wanted to see what. So the cautionary tale there, and there was reasons why our electric rates hadn't been increased. 2008, the recession happened, and there was no appetite to increase rates when people's economy was crashing. So there's reasons for it, but it's still what that meant is we've been transferring out money for this return on investment. Our rates have been very low, and what that has kind of given us a little bit of a handicap of investing in our infrastructure that we need. And so we've been kind of slow in that regards. I will share more of the rates and our comparison compared to other cities. So if you look at, I have two different charts here, tables here, I should say, and one is residential revenue comparison of utilities. If you look at this first column here compared to Petoskey, Charlevoix, Traverse City, and Great Lakes Energy, their ready to serve charge are all higher than ours. So Petoskey has $12.45 per month, Charlevoix $17.75 a month, Traverse City $10.50, and then Great Lakes Energy, which is a co-op, not a utility, but they are our competition, quote unquote, nearby. We're surrounded by Great Lakes Energy. They charge $39.21 per month for residential ready to serve. We charge $10 per month. Now, again, different for different classes. There's different ready to serve charges for commercial, et cetera. But this is just one example compared to other cities. Our dollars per kilowatt hour is lower than all four. We're at about 8.67 cents. Petoskey's at 9.65 cents per kilowatt hour. Charlevoix is at just over 9 cents an hour. Traverse City is almost at 10 cents an hour, and Great Lakes Energy is at 13.7 cents per kilowatt hour. So you see the average breakdown per month per kilowatt hour, assuming 900 kilowatt hours per month. We have the total monthly cost per customer. We're about 11 to $10, $12 lower for our residential customer on average compared to neighboring utilities. And then this last column kind of shows for our residential rates, the revenue difference compared to Harbor Springs. Petoskey, Charlevoix, and Traverse City are also at about 13% more revenue per customer per month than we sit at, whereas Great Lakes Energy is at about 85%. So another way to look at it too, again, those were just using a hypothetical, looking at in-city residential ratepayers. But when you look at the actual budgets, the revenue of these utilities compared to their total number of customers, you see that here you have total revenue and sales for each city, total number of customers. Then we look at an average dollar amount of revenue per year, and the average revenue per customer per month, and the difference. So Harbor Springs, on average, for all customers, we receive about $1,200 a year in revenue for electric sales. The next closest is Charlevoix with over $1,500 a year. Petoskey at just over $2,000 a year, and Traverse City at $2,363 per customer per year. And this is based on total revenue and sales So that difference is anywhere between 26% more in revenue that Charlevoix receives, up to 96% more than Traverse receives.
I wanted to be sure, this is all customers or residential
This,
customers?
this second is all customers and all electric sales. So as you can see, we are, these cities also are investing in their infrastructure, but even compared to neighboring utilities that are the municipal utilities, we are well below our revenue and rates for them. They are investing, of course, in their infrastructure, just like we need to, but it's just something that good to see. Obviously, we don't want to be in a place where we're not competitive, where we're at, we don't need to be at the same rates as Great Lakes Energy, but to keep up with the infrastructure investment, we probably need to be closer to where Charlevoix. They're very more in line with our customer base and our size as far as utility, and I think being more in line with what they're at is probably more going to provide more benefits to our infrastructure overall. I also had city clerk prepare what different potential rate increases over the next few years could look like. And this is assuming we do an $8 million bond. And the reason I chose an $8 million bond was because those were the two necessary projects that we felt were necessary: the substation and the M119 line rebuild. The whole purpose of doing that M119 line rebuild is to ensure we have stable, reliable energy to the west, our far end of the western customers. It kind of goes hand in hand with building the substation. So you see, a 3% rate increase annually for 5 years. We start out with some significant deficits at the electric fund, but then by year 4 we start seeing surpluses, and by year 5 we're at 183,000 surplus. So we can start rebuilding our electric fund balance, as well as save for projects in 6 larger projects in 6 to 10 years. We have other different mechanisms, schematics up there, sorry, one-time 10% rate increase versus no increases, increasing the ready to serve charge, and et cetera. I think it's probably makes more sense, in my opinion, to do a rate increase as opposed to a ready to serve increase, because our ready to serve is kind of kept up with the inflation. Is also ready to serve charge is more in line with some of the other communities, like Petoskey's is 12.45, but Petoskey's is 12.45 for in-city and out-of-city. Ours is 10 for in-city, but higher for the out-of-city than Petoskey, so kind of averages out. And I also think rate customers, those that don't use as much electricity shouldn't be paying more unless we need to justify payment for the rate served. So when we're looking at electricity, the costs we're thinking about is, distribution costs. We are basically a distribution electric system. We distribute energy. We really don't generate much energy on our own. We enter into projects and contracts through the MPPA for purchasing energy that other cities or for-profit enterprises generate. So we are basically a distribution system. So most of our money and investment, aside from purchasing energy, goes into improving and maintaining our infrastructure for distribution. Finally, my last page here shows what your average monthly electric bill increase could look like based on different rate schedules. And again, it's not something we need to decide today, but I think it's something that we should know that rate increases probably need to happen in order for this bonding to go forward. Of course, we can talk about other things like that return on investment and how that goes to general fund, but we still need some rate increase. And what we have presented for your 3% annually for 5 years. First year, you see your monthly bill, average monthly bill goes from $88 to $90, and then from 88 after 5 years, $88, what it is currently right now, to $100, 40%. Other ones have lower rate increases. So this is why we recommend a 3% annual increase. Alternatively, we could also have our rate study, UFS, Utility Financial Solutions, come in and do a rate study before the budget season. They could determine which class should see different types of increases. When we did this study back in 2021, it averaged between about 3.3% for each year, but some rate classes saw 2%, 1% increase, while others saw higher, and they do that based, there's several different factors they look at too, as to why some classes of customers should get increases versus others shouldn't get as many increases. So, and they could even come back with information whether or not they think the ready to serve charge should be increased. So yeah, that's, again, I said, no decision needs to be made on this, but we should know that when it comes to budgeting season and next year, that rate increases should happen in order to keep up. So with that, I'll go back to the my memo. I don't have anything to wrap up there. Oh yeah, and there's one last thing. We are participating in MISO, which is the regional system operator for the United States. That's how we are involved. We're part of the MISO region for electricity generation distribution, and we have participated in a program where if we just turn on our generator engines or backup generator engines, usually once a year, we get about $75,000 annually in electric fund revenue, and it's a program they have in place, and it's very valuable. So that's another boost of revenue that we're happy to see. So it could offset some of that.
Is the cost for a rate study significant?
Nick, you remember what the last one was, 20?
I think it was right around 20, but don't quote me on that.
20,000.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I think that one was for a 3-year.
It was a 3-year rate study. We might want to do a longer rate study.
I would like to say at least 5.
5 years.
If we raised our rates to the level of Charlevoix, did you give us a figure for what that return would be in the first year?
Not to the level of Charlevoix. Charlevoix rate, they do theirs a little bit differently because their ready to serve charge is $17.75 per month customer, but their kilowatt hours are more closely to ours. So ultimately, yes, we would probably that 12%. Once you get, if we do a 3% year for 5 years, we're talking about probably 150. That's about $700,000. We're right at about where Charlevoix probably would be if they don't raise their rates any further than they are. We're probably inching in on Charlevoix's rates. Or sorry, we're inching in on their revenue that they get from their customers.
So we would generate an additional $700,000 a year?
Once after the 5th year of 3% annual. So the first year, you're gonna see probably approximately $140,000, $150,000. In the second year, if you do another 3%, that's additional $150,000 on top of that. So it compounds to, 5 years times 150 is about $750. Give or take, though, that depends on usage. Of course, there's other factors. But.
You gave us a bond amount of 7 million. What were we doing with the 7 million?
Well, the 7 million would be, Nick talked about having a little cushion room for the $6.5 million substation. I don't know if you want to explain that a little bit.
There's costs involved with issuing bonds. And we don't know what they are until we figure out how much we're gonna go for, if any, whatever. So they recommended to me, if you're looking at 6.5, look at 7. If you're looking at 7.5, look at 8, so on. And I think to answer your question, Wendy, not that Victor didn't, but if we were to go to basically the same rate schedule right off the gun as Charlevoix, the increase in the ready to serve charge would generate around $360,000 a year. And I haven't calculated out the 1 penny difference on our kilowatt hours because I don't know how many we have.
A one penny though is approximately about probably like from there at 9, just over 9 cents, almost 9. It's probably about 6-7% increase. Would be a 6 to 7% increase.
There's a lot of information
here.
There is, and that's why we're saying there's no decision on that needs to be made, but obviously it needs to be in consideration when you're thinking about how much to bond for, because clearly if we go bond for $10 million, we'd have to bring back a different rate schedule than 3% per year, because $10 million is more.
Is the difference, you talked about the cost, getting the bond, is that paid up front or are you bonding that full amount?
That's just part of the proceeds. And once we get past this step here, I will likely have the municipal advisors come to a meeting and kind of walk through a broad outline of how this works and those kinds of questions.
Okay.
But yeah, once we can establish an amount, we can bring a resolution to the next council meeting. We can have them also present if needed.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be more than happy to come. They've offered, and we just need to give them a little direction before they can bring us back anything else. At the same time, like Victor said, the rate situation doesn't have to be decided tonight. That's gonna be a pretty good conversation at budget time, because at the same time, we're gonna talk about this ROI thing, pilot, which was brought up earlier, payment in lieu of taxes. Different things like that that are gonna affect both the electric fund and the general fund. So I'll bring back scenarios for that probably in September.
Is there the 4.5% rate that the bond advisors quoted, is that good for a particular period of time, or is it really could change tomorrow?
Market driven could change.
It's okay, so it's not just on our credit rating, it's also based on the interest rates that are in the market, correct?
My understanding, yes.
So how is it determined what day you go to market, you know, to do this? Is it just a
Stay in the dark?
Yeah, doesn't,
no,
our bond council, our entity that we use, you know, what, if we were to make a resolution or approve a motion tonight to bond X $million, what's the timeline then? What happens?
Well, I think what would happen if you want to move in that direction, we would have the resolution for council to be adopted on the next council meeting. And then from there, Nick would give it to our bond advisors and then they would go out to the.
Yeah, and this part of going forward after council makes a decision is going to be something that they're gonna be municipal advisors, Benzinski and Company, and then bond council will lead us down that path. So just because the council approved a resolution for $8 million or 7 or 5 or whatever it might be, that doesn't mean that this is gonna be lacking the rates in at 9:35 tonight.
No, so tonight, we're not approving a resolution. Though we may be, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We may be approving a motion to seek a resolution
For the amount of money, because.
for the amount of money, and then I'm assuming at the next council meeting, that's when we'll adopt a resolution.
That would be the idea.
Okay.
If time permitting. I mean, I don't know how long the process will take with the municipal advisors. That was the plan.
The resolution and et cetera, et cetera.
I think tonight's thought process was just to say, have you guys say, okay, look, here's these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. Of these parts of projects that we've been talking about for several years. I don't feel comfortable with 10. I don't feel comfortable not doing this or that. What parts and pieces? That's, I think, kind of the direction we're looking for you to give us direction. Where to go from here.
And yeah, and as I said, based on the finances and not wanting to recommend a higher rate increase than that 3% annual. That's why my recommendation is $8 million, but we do have a lot of infrastructure projects. Obviously, you see on our capital improvements plan, when you've looked at it, the vast majority of them were electric infrastructure projects. So we do have a lot of electric infrastructure projects coming down the pipeline, but they'll have to be delayed a little bit.
And what is our fund balance again in the electrical fund, roughly?
$2.2 million.
And this is kind of a longer thing than just thinking about, you know, because, okay, so we do 8 million. Do this, get this hashed out, and then here we are making payments for 25 years. That has to be taken into consideration when you're looking at these next projects. If I'm spending every dollar we have, making the bond payments, we're never gonna do anything. So these rate increases, keeping them as minimal as possible to get back to zero, you know, break even. And then to where we can say, okay, we're exceeding, revenues are exceeding expenditures by 180, 200 grand a year. Maybe then at that point, no more rate increases. But these projects then are gonna have to be stretched out to pay cash for, because we're not gonna go back to this bond well. In my opinion, it would not for 25 years.
Right, and there's also obviously unforeseen expenses to the grid, such as
Storm.
an ice storm. And I think it's important, you know, we are a distribution electrical utility, not a, we don't have a hamster in the back spinning a wheel, creating electricity for folks, so to speak.
I know we're not talking about, we don't have to decide about rates tonight, but I only have one concern about one of the things you said. And that was we can do 3% and then maybe we don't have to do it anymore. But I kind of think that's how we're in the situation we are right now. Is that we went from what, 2009 to 2021 and didn't do anything. And now we've got all this expenses, all these expenses that we have to figure out how to pay for.
Right.
And our rates are so much lower than everybody else. I mean, it seems like we kind of, I'm not picking on anybody because none of us was here, but.
We left money on the table.
Huh?
We
Yeah.
left money on the table.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize at that time, though, I don't know the whole process,
We
but
don't
like
know
I
what
said,
they're
there's a lot of different factors, you
Sure.
know, and circumstances why councils did what they did, and one of them was, though, the recession in 2009 and 2012, the costs of,
I get that.
yeah. And so it was a decision they had to make.
Just out of curiosity too, is it commonplace for municipalities that run their own electric utilities to transfer a return of investment to the general fund? Is that
Yes.
is that commonplace?
But they
Are
do
we
it,
the only
they
ones?
do it in different ways. So Nick, you can speak to that.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research on this actually for several years now, but usually it doesn't only affect the electric fund utility. I mean, it'll take into play the water and sewer fund, for instance. Any enterprise fund that is run as a business. There's payment in lieu of taxes, there's ROI, and I've looked at Petoskey, Traverse City, you know, all over the board, and their numbers and their calculations are, everybody does it a little differently. The one thing that I would like to do, however, when we discuss this at budget time, because there has been some current issues, you know, of different utilities across the state and probably the country, I'm sure, taking way too much money or what people felt was too much money from these utilities and dumping it in the general fund.
Yeah.
So when we get this straightened out and get our budget, figure out what we're doing, I want something written, a policy in place. Here's why we do what we do.
So there, and that's a good point. There is City of Holland. This is something I learned from the MPPA conference I went to in early May. I believe it's Holland. Someone is suing them because they claim they're transferring too much money from their electric fund into their general fund. Now, where that case is gonna go, I don't know. These people have done it for other funds, water and sewer funds, but now they're coming at electric utilities. So there is nationally, there seems to be consensus between, I won't say consensus, national average for how much money of your electric sales revenue, I think it was like 5% was how much your average municipal utility transfers. Our Supreme Court in Michigan is gonna decide what is too much to transfer between an electric fund into a general fund is anyone's guess. So we are paying attention to that case as well as other cases too. So it's something to consider too, that there is a risk we take by not justifying the amount of money we take from the electric fund in the general fund, so.
And I'm sure there was justification in the past. You know, that was, I'm assuming this distribution system, 1950s, 60s going forward. I haven't found what the justification was. But that's one thing that I want to look at and cement in when we do this budgeting thing. And then back to your increases in the rates. You know, the whole idea in my personal mind is if we're a city running a utility and we no longer become competitive or are at the same rate schedule as Great Lakes Energy, why are we in the business? I think the benefit of having a utility is trying to maintain the stability and structures of our distribution system for situations like these storms. All in all, I think we were on top of it. You know, we've learned weaknesses, but the other thing is still provide the same electricity to our customers at a cheaper price than the neighboring co-op.
Agreed.
Once we become, hopefully well beyond my lifespan, once we come to that meeting point where we're not providing any more savings to our users, why the headache? But that's just my personal thoughts.
And we're far from that point.
Yes, long ways. But the 3% increase going forward, even after this, and we're like, okay, we're to the good. You know, 2, 3, 4 years from now. 3% even going forward for another few years. I mean, everything goes up every year. Purchased energy has gone up 3 times what it was. But I think that's something at that point, council would look at, where do we go next step?
I'm just thinking of I don't know, mechanism or policy in place to make sure that there's a hard look at that going forward, you know, after we have some sort of a process for looking at rates every year. And not just saying, oh yeah, let's just forget it for a year. I'm just concerned that that's really not responsible, and I'm not sure what the best mechanism is. I'm just throwing that out there.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you want to open it up to public comment and then.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anybody not in? Yes, sir.
No, Carmen. Carter Williams, 355 East Bay. So, I think you're gonna have to raise rates by 12%. If you think about it, every 3% is $150,000. You have an $8 million expense. So to cover that, you basically need to raise it by 12%. If you cut out the payment that you're moving over to the general fund, you got to make that up somehow. We're in this problem in part because other city councils have not made the right decision. And the way you normally do this, I worked on the Senate Energy Committee. I've worked for several utilities in the past. I've built A lot of the hardware, I put in 220,000 solar panels on homes, 20,000 homes. So I've been like around this industry a little bit. The way normal utilities do this is they look into their forecasts in the future. You know, you can figure out you need to do upgrades. It's understandable. Transformers fail. That's a very predictable thing out to 20, 30, 40 years. Figure out what that is, figure out what those cash flows are. You set aside a certain amount of your rate base to fund the reserve. You look at that, and then you decide how much profit to take. And then you decide what the rate is. And normally I have to go to the PUC to do that. But that's the process. It's what do we have to do to keep the utility alive? Right now, you're doing a project that's not costing $8 million. You're doing a project that's costing $13 million. And it's costing $13 million because in 2006, nobody addressed it. In 2019, people thought people were doing a favor by not raising the rates. And add on top of it, MPPA was in here on January 20th. I don't think everybody understood what he said, but I've lived in that discussion. We had that discussion in both Texas and in California in terms of instability of the grid. There are various reasons why the grid's gonna get more unstable. Right now, MISO has us in the highest risk area for grid stability in this region. It has to do with as you increase renewables or particular reasons in the technology that we get more unreliable. That's good, and we're moving more electric. So you've got air conditioning units, heating units are all moving more electric. So there are particular reasons why that makes the grid less stable as it's designed right now. You likely will have to spend more money on the order of $4 or $5 million in the next few years to address that stability. Nobody here agrees with me on that yet, but I've been around this long enough to know it. That's the conversation DOE's having. That's the conversation a lot of utilities are having at the higher level. So in conclusion, I would just bite the bullet, take the 12%, increase 3% a year. If the amount you're saving gets too high, back off. That's your formula. That's how you know. It's not, hey, do we not want to raise it for our neighbors? It's, is the thing set? The capital cost you have is higher than Great Lakes. So even though their rates are lower, the capital cost, because you're increasing your debt risk, is probably higher. So your effective rate against everything that we're borrowing is going up. And so while the individual rates are lower, the rates we have for the school, everything else that we're doing is probably higher. And so we're not really saving much money off of round trip. We're not saving that much money off of Great Lakes.
Oh.
Thanks.
Thank you. Got a race to
Bill Mulder, 372 West Summit Street. I want to agree with Carter about rates. Low rates are not a gift to our residents or to our electric customers. It's put us in, big trouble, and here we are. What we owe our customers and our residents is, superb service and, state-of-the-art reliability. So we do need to have rates that are, that can help us pay for the infrastructure we need. And we got the good benchmarks now based on Victor's study. So I think we need to be ready to raise some rates and, still provide value over some of our nearby competition, but let's, fund the infrastructure we need. And then secondly, in terms of the amount to bond, I can't really assess if, our full $7.5 million in all the electric projects, exactly how much more reliability this can generate, how much more stability. But, if our experts say that that's desirable, beneficial, and would, be warranted, then, let's go ahead and borrow what we need to borrow to at least do these first two phases. If we need to come back and raise rates even more to, fund some infrastructure outside of the bonds, then, let's plan to do that. But boy, I think the ice storm just showed people's lives depend on electricity. And this was a disruption that was just really tough on our residents and our customers. And, we were lucky that nobody died. And we have all the makings of a fantastic system here. So we ought to be able to offer just a superb to our residents and their parents. Let's do it.
Thank you, sir.
Keith Newbury, 2565. I just wanted to share as a electric, our family has enjoyed electricity from this building, probably since it was first, what is this building, 1860s? But anyway, our family has enjoyed electricity and we for a long time. And you need to think of your whole constituents, not just the city of Harbor Springs. There are a lot of people that pay into the electric fund, including us. One way of offsetting rates is to look at how we purchase wholesale electricity. And maybe what we do is we actually don't put conditions on purchasing wholesale electricity. We purchase it from the lowest cost supplier, but we give the customer the option. If they want additional percentage from renewable sources, I'm all energy, all in, whether it's nuclear, wind, solar, natural gas, you name it. But if a customer wants to purchase a higher percentage, let them make a commitment for their household. Let's say I want to do 50% for a period of 3 years. If that energy is more expensive, we can bill it at a higher kilowatt hour and actually as a city utility, make more money on it. My second point, I've benefited greatly with smart meters. I had a smart meter in a different municipality for my vehicle, my electric. I had smart meters for my air conditioning systems in homes. And actually I got lower rates on smart meters, but there was a, there was a cost because in high demand, I would go out, my electric vehicle wouldn't be charged or it'd only have a partial charge. So smart meters can do a lot of things, but you do need to protect the data. I could get tremendous amount of data on the amount of kilowatts by day mapped out. And what they could do, we need to protect, because that data could be sold to entities, because they would map out your energy usage versus your neighbors versus other people with electric vehicles. We just need to make sure that data doesn't get sold and people start marketing of that data. EVs are here to stay. Okay? But the market acceptance without external forces like government incentives and mandates is not, especially for Emmett County, is nowhere near what they're projecting. So EVs will increase, but they're nowhere near projection what they're predicting the industry without external forces. So the EV growth market, China has all kinds of macroeconomic and government really spurring the EV industry. The important thing is we look at EV growth. EVs still, the price of EVs have come down. It's still over 55,000 average transaction price. And that's because industries are putting, the current data is 14.7% is their funding. Manufacturers are putting discounts, 0% interest, trying to drive that. So when you figure EVs in your equation, if you take out external forces, they're nowhere going to be 50% of vehicles or even 20% in Emmett County. And the last thing I want to say is we should sell electricity to EV owners. They're affluent buyers, they're affluent customers, and we should not give them free electricity. We should sell it to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Just a couple of points. We do have a volunteer green pricing program where you can choose to be in 25, 50%, 75% category. So we do have that. People can elect to participate and pay higher bills to have renewable energy credit. But with the state mandates, 50% by 2030, and then even further by 2035, that might become obsolete as we kind of state mandates gear us toward more having to be renewable energy. AMI, yep, that's something that our engineer And MPPA has recommended, of course, it's not necessary, it's not one of those necessary, but it's very beneficial projects. And Keith, I wasn't sure what you said about selling, we don't give our electricity away to EVs. I don't know what you're trying to get at with that.
No, I'm just saying the charge stations, I haven't looked at them recently. But the charge stations at the Harbor Master, you don't have to use EVgo where you tap your card and it actually bills you in your monthly statement. Or do you plug it in and charge for free?
That's not a free charge, no, that's.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It used to at one time.
No, so we don't run that. So that was installed by a company. We didn't pay for it, so the company handles that.
Who pays for the electricity? That's what I want.
The person who's charging their car. Whoever charges the car pays for electricity.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah,
I
just-
thought
just-
it
just
was-
so you know,
I stand
We
corrected.
did have sometime, one person plug their EV in our city hall building one day and we unplugged it. They plugged it back in, we unplugged it. And then we turned off that power and out. Anyway, so yeah, we have some people trying to take practice. We do have one hand raised on Zoom, Dennis Elliott.
Hi, you guys. It is past 9 o'clock and I'm usually in bed at 8 or 8:30. I'm feeling for the board members. Whenever Victor speaks or when Carter stands up, I don't know if that helps you or if it confuses you more. There is really no fire on making a decision on anything tonight. It's so late and there's so much information in your packet. I don't know what each member sitting on the commission or the council is feeling right now in your gut. Are you comfortable to be able to make this giant move tonight that's gonna go into maybe past how long you last on this earth? I'm encouraging a couple things. First of all, that we don't put these things on the agenda so late that people are not capable to hold all of the information and make a really good decision for the people of Harbor. So please, if you're not feeling comfortable, please move to table it and gather more information, have your questions answered, and even do a special session. Or what about educating the people more about how electricity funding happens within our city, including those questions that I asked to begin with, why the excess is commingled in the general fund instead of being reserved and dumped back into infrastructure for electricity. Thank you.
Do you feel real strong about motion one way or the other? Is that right?
Well, I think my understanding is we need to make a decision tonight.
Well, one of the reasons we need to make a decision is because we have a real estate agreement with the owner of the land that we're putting our substation on. We have until, I think, we have another month to make a decision on before that's finalized. So yeah, a month and a half probably. So
And
yeah,
we have to have the bond
in order to go
in
forward
order
with the project.
to go forward with the project.
So
period.
that is why we're doing this process.
Well, we've been talking about the substation for a long, long time. We've debated the merits of it, the location of it, we've heard from experts on it, why it's needed. To me, it's not a question of this is something that we can think about. No, I believe we need to move forward on it. As far as the line rebuild, I also believe we started 2 phases of that project. We need to finish it up. I do think that we need to consider, you know, at a future date, the return on investment going back to the general fund. But we need to move forward with this as far as I'm concerned. It's not something that, I'm sat here at 9 o'clock this evening and we're now just kicking it about. It's been something that we've been talking about since before I was on council. And, I believe it needs to be done. And I would, go for what I believe is actually a conservative figure, and that's 8 million. It doesn't include the AMI metering, although I believe that that would be a really good thing. But I'm also conscious of not hitting our consumers with 5% increases at this point in time. That's my feelings.
Discussion on the board, or comments? Yeah.
So by June 30th, we have to have a decision for the property owner.
Yeah, Jim, I don't recall the exact date, but we extended. There was a certain date that we had to secure bonding by. We had the ability to extend it by 90 days. I think that date was sometime April 19th. So maybe we have until July 19th or 20th or something around that date to make a decision on.
But the minimum would be 4.7 million, so a $5 million bond instead of an 8 million. To meet their requirements.
No, the transmission, that transmission line is part and parcel of the substation. So but I showed them separately because they're showing us separate projects, but they are part and parcel of one another, because they're going to be putting in a new substation. You have to rebuild that transmission line, get the different lines going to it. But it just is a way to break down the costs. Substation itself, just the substation, is that $4.7 million, but the lines going into it, the transmission lines are rebuild of that line is $1.8 million.
So that's the 4.7 plus the 1.8.
Yeah.
Right. I believe we should go ahead with the $8 million bond, and I think we should authorize. I'm not sure what the motion needs to be, but we should ask for a resolution to be prepared for $8 million for approval on June 2nd.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion. I'm sorry, wasn't that clear?
I would second that. I'd second that motion.
Obviously, I'm gonna do a roll call for something of this epic proportion.
Unless there's more discussion,
Yeah, unless there's any other.
more discussion at the table.
Any other comments? You girls?
Kathy Macho,
Yes.
Jamie Melky,
Yes.
Michael Behrman,
Yes.
you Reed,
No.
Tom Graham,
No.
motion carried.
All right, well, let's see what else is on the agenda. For the city.
You got a report for it?
Yeah, previous council meeting, I said we were gonna bring an administrative ordinance on outdoor display of goods. That was a confusion on our part. Last year, we adopted an administrative ordinance on outdoor display of goods. That was because at that time, when the new zoning code was approved, it didn't contain provisions on outdoor display of goods. But the current zoning code does contain provisions on that, so there's no need to bring that back to council. But the DDA and the planning commission did look at it for potential edits to that outdoor display of goods section to incorporate into new zoning. There is a vacant seat on the DDA. I did advertise for that position. Those who had previously applied back in November, December, their applications are still good, file. So if anyone else is interested in serving on the DDA, you can submit your application by Friday, May 30th, or contact me to learn more about it.
I'm wondering why we're only giving them a 2-week window to apply.
Well, it's 2 weeks Well, you know, the resignation happened when I mean, we can give them longer.
This last Wednesday's DDA meeting.
The idea was to try to get someone on before the next TDA meeting, which is June, the second Wednesday in June, and the council has to make that appointment. But if council wants to wait until afterwards too, that's fine. I would just threw it in there so we could have someone on board at the next council, the next DDA meeting.
Let's do it in June.
June. There was a water leak on State Street between M119 and Summit a few days ago. The DPW did fix that. We had a question at a previous meeting about opening the boardwalk staircase. So people who are looking to donate could at least get some sense of you know, the boardwalk, the eastern section of the boardwalk, and maybe have a little they could sit on the risers there, platforms. And so we did the costs there. We could open it up for a few steps. There need to be some repairs to some boards and risers, half day's work, and a few $100 of materials to get that open only part way up the staircase, not all the way. So if that's something you want us to do, we can do that. We could have some information there that says, you know, boardwalk closed, we're ready fundraising for it, but it's not a lot of large costs. Do those repairs. An update, Maureen Kenny in September 2024 filed a Michigan Campaign Finance Act complaint against me, city manager, against alleging that the informational mailer that was sent out, the zoning code ballot question, that was violation of the NCFA provisions. The attorney general's office issued a determination that there was no violation there, and that was all factually based. So it's an update on there. That's been an 8-9 month process. And then not on here, but there's an updated Otter lawsuit versus City of Harbor Springs. He's appealing the Court of Appeals decision to the Supreme Court of Appeals. Primarily because the Court of Appeals opinion on the Veterans Preference Act was unfavorable to this case, so they're appealing to the Supreme Court. Our response is due in early June, and then it's likely the Supreme Court will decide whether or not to take up that appeal in the fall sometime. So we'll know more about that in the fall. As far as other things going on, regular meetings, still increase of users. I did participate in a Topo Nexus Career Pathways event for the 8th graders. It was an 8th grade career fair. I know Jim Raymer and other people, the business owners, participated as well. It was a fun event. So yeah, that's all I really have. If there's any questions about city operations and administration.
Thank you.
I make a motion that we instruct the DPW to spend the funds in the time to open the boardwalk on the east end as high up as they can do it.
Is it to the top of the stairs?
I don't think it's to the top.
I guess I would have to know how far.
It says to the first landing.
No.
That's about,
Turns.
it's where it turns and heads west.
I don't see where, I mean,
I guess since we're not sure, I mean, you guys would make a motion to authorize them to fix them as far as they go based on X amount of dollars. Just,
right now, what do you
just
say
to-
was half a day's work?
just to speed the process up, so I don't have to come back monthly now.
So $500 should cover.
We're talking about half a day's, let's say half a day's work.
Half a day plus 500. That what you maybe.
2 guys working on it probably. Yeah. I would say, up to $1,000 to be safe. Because I don't know exactly how much the materials are gonna cost for the wood planks.
Amend your motion?
However, Nick wants to $1,000 to make the repairs up to $1,000.
Yes, approve staff to go ahead with the ceiling of $1,000 expenditure to repair
The stairs.
to an accessible point as far as possible.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mike Behrman,
Yes.
Kathy Mitchell,
Yes.
Don Graham.
Yes.
Jamie Melky,
No.
no, Wendy Reed.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we're next on the board and commission.
Do we have anything to do there?
Well, the board members need to get their reports.
I'll go first. On May 13th, the Parks Board met and we briefly discussed fundraising and public outreach and park priorities. We then talked about our plans for the Harbor View Park. We did finalize a master plan that we will share with council when they're ready to see it. It's divided into 3 phases, with the first phase being very minimal, maybe some trees addition when we move them out of Shea Park, and then the second phase potentially a picnic pavilion, and the third phase was a walking path. And then we made a motion to have to ask council if they want to look into potential other options for Kiwanis Park. There was a lot of discussion about whether we should continue to look into repairing an old building, or if it would be better to spend $500,000 and potentially get a brand new building. So I don't know if you want to, if you have any questions, or if we want that on the future agenda. That is what the Parks Board recommended.
And the Kiwanis Park issue should be on the future agenda because the Parks Board made a recommendation to council, so that will go on the June 2nd.
Okay. Do you need us to give you consensus if we want you to look into other options? That was kind of what the direction.
I think that the discussion for council would be to whether or not they want to look into city staff investigating and spending time and money to investigate other options. So I think that would be the discussion held at the council meeting. But
Planning Commission met on, May 15th. Last Thursday. It was a very productive meeting. We had a learning session on zoning background and zoning districts. We began the very important work of delving into Article 2 zoning districts, and we really had great discussion, great public input regarding the community district, manufacturing district, which we're contemplating changing to the industrial district, waterfront district, TR dealing with the various districts that resemble TR, what to do with those, the CBD, convenience and business district, mobile home park district, residential office services. We've had good discussion about that. So great discussion. We did approve the red lines for Article 5, general provisions, and our next meeting is June 5th.
That's right.
Okay. Did I do okay?
The zoning board of appeals did not meet this last month, so I have no report for that week.
The sewer authority met last Tuesday, I think it was. And the ice storm hit them hard, and they had 260,000 in overtime
I think that was fuel.
and fuel.
That was what?
I think that was the total cost actually with the
Was that their
fuel and their overtime, they had guys spending the night there.
Yeah,
It was
and their big issue at the moment is they need to replace their crane truck, and they've decided that the crane truck that we had budgeted isn't gonna be big enough to handle their capacity, so they have to double their budget to get a bigger crane truck. So.
I went to a tree committee board, and mainly they talked about making a flower arrangement around the flagpole by the cannon. How wide it should be, and if it needed ADA access or not, and what that would or wouldn't cost. I also missed the DDA meeting because broke 4 ribs the other day and had spent a night in the hospital.
Oh my God.
Is that a good enough excuse?
Oh my gosh.
That's all I've got.
I did attend one of many meetings last week. I did go to the VBA meeting, so there's a lot of good. If anyone is interested, I suggest looking at the website and looking at the YouTube recording. Jody Eubank resigned, so that's why there's the opening that Victor's talking about. They had a discussion about the outdoor display of goods and maybe making some suggestions about that. I'm not real sure. Promotion committee discussed they have many events left for the rest of the year. We're discussing all the way to the end of the year. The enhancement committee, this is their subcommittee, indicated that the Merchants Walkway is moving along. I have not been there, so I do not
They
know.
laid some cement there the other day.
Okay, so they've got new benches ordered. And the flower pots, you may have seen those starting to be put together around town. They expect to have that finished this week. And the lampposts still, painting of the lampposts is still not on the horizon because they can't get a reasonable bid for the cost. So.
Thank you, Kathy. Actually, you must have something to say.
So we're on city council, new and old business. I did have a resident approach me concerned about some neighbors have a lot of just dead brush in their yard. This was even prior to the storm, and questioned that we have a ordinance on grass and weeds, 60.108. If the grass gets longer than 12 inches, the city, there's a whole process that kicks in. But at any rate, this resident encouraged council to also explore a possible ordinance on brush, dead brush, or debris, organic debris being left in a yard for an exceedingly long period of time, dead Christmas trees, etc.
Yeah, actually, that same ordinance about grass and weeds does talk about debris. But that debris in the sense that if it's a hazard and it has to go to council to authorize city staff to do an investigation. And then we come back to council to declare a public nuisance. So it's not like the grass. So what I did send a letter to this resident, if it's the same person, encouraging them to clean up their yard so we don't have to go through that process. But there are a lot of properties with that. So if you want to come back on a council meeting, but yeah, that is it's a process where in other cities, it's normally just the city manager, police chief. They go out and they do an investigation without needing council's authorization to investigate a public nuisance.
Okay.
So anyway, but yeah.
Thank you. I'll talk to you to see if your resident is the same as my resident. And finally, just so council knows, the middle school Michigan Youth and Government Club last year had asked me to come as an elected official and talk about local government and so forth. They must not have all fell asleep because they asked me to come back again this year and like give the same exact presentation. So that's tomorrow at the middle school. I hope there's different kids there this time.
Hope you will not be offended if I don't attend.
Yeah.
You can count your blessings if you don't attend.
Anything else to add or period or we're adjourned?
I would like to bring up, the events on public property. Again, I really think that that's something that needs to be discussed. I think that we keep getting asked to do more and more events on public property and, they do benefit the community, but I think that there are, some ticketed events specifically that should or maybe could be charged for the services that we're providing.
City property is for the city people.
But it's for a lot of other people too. I mean, think Festival of the Book that brings thousands of people in town. They give us $50. So that's.
Council want that on an agenda in the future?
Yeah,
Sure.
I think it should be.
One more comment, on that, the parks thing with, Kiwanis Park, what is the next step then? Are you okay if we do bring to you, other options than just trying to repair the existing building and?
You know, what's gonna happen is we're gonna go to the council on June 2nd, and council's gonna discuss at that meeting whether or not to authorize staff to investigate. Yeah.
Karen, you've been awful quiet.
It was a good meeting.
Got anything else?